When you think about Marcel Rev's work on Euphoria, I'm sure the first thing you think about is season 2 and shooting on Kodak Ektachrome. After all, that's all anybody would talk about back then. But when I think about Euphoria, I think about season 1, and I think it's because of the lenses. Way back in the day, I used to be somebody who didn't really give much thought to lenses. I just thought that the differences between glass was just too nuanced for me to really care about. But whenever I watched the first season of Euphoria, I felt like I kind of had this epiphany about it. It was one of the times that I really started to notice the impact that lenses had on the visuals and the tone and the mood of your cinematography. There was just such a beautiful look to the show. The softness of the glass, that crazy depth of field, just how impressionistic the bokeh was on these lenses. It was stuff that just really stood out to me. It was shot on the Alexa 65 using Arri Prime DNAs, and it's those lenses that I want to talk about because you might not realize it, but you can actually get your hands on those lenses very easily, and it's something that I'm going to recommend you do soon, but I'll elaborate on that later. But first I want to talk about the Alexa 65. The 65 is Arri's largest sensor. It was designed to be the digital counterpart to 65mm film because with a 65mm sensor compared to full frame, you're going to get a much larger image. Greater field of view, shallower depth of field, just an overall larger perspective. Think about the difference you get if you throw a 50mm lens on a Super 35 sensor versus on a full frame sensor. It's going to be the exact same concept, except now if you throw that 50mm lens onto a 65mm sensor, you're going to get a much larger image than even full frame, especially horizontally. With the sensor in the Alexa 65, it's actually bigger than 65mm film itself by about 2mm diagonally. The only image that's bigger than the 65 is actual IMAX film, which is enormous in comparison. It's stupid. So if you're going to make a 65mm digital camera, the immediate problem you're going to run into is lenses, because all of those Super 35 and full frame lenses are not going to have image circles that can cover the entire 65mm sensor. So now that Arri has created this large 65mm sensor, the next step for them is to create an assortment of bespoke lenses to pair with it. And they did. They came out with 4 lens sets: the Arri Prime 65, the Arri Prime 65S, the Arri 765s, and the Arri Prime DNAs. And those last lenses are the ones that were used to shoot Euphoria Season 1. Those lenses have also been used to shoot The Batman, Green Knight, Furiosa, Boston Strangler, Rings of Power, All Quiet on the Western Front, Smile, Chaos Walking, even Five Nights at Freddy's, and there are so many more projects that they've been used on. So I think it's fair to say that the prime DNAs of those 4 sets are the most popular. Now, the important thing to note about cameras like the Alexa 65 or the 265 and lenses like the Arri Prime DNAs is that they're only available for rental through Arri. And, if you look online, you're not going to find prices for them. But I can tell you that the Arri Prime DNAs cost about $4,000 per lens per day. So let's say you have a project and you want to shoot on the Arri Prime DNAs. It's a 3-day shoot and you want 6 lenses, which is a standard size for a production. If you wanted to get Arri Prime DNAs, it's going to cost you $24,000 per day to get those lenses. These are clearly lenses that are aimed at, clientele with deep pockets. They're for high-end productions, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't get your hands on them, because these lenses weren't designed from the ground up by Arri. They were actually made by sourcing glass. Think about it. You've just created this digital camera with a large 65mm sensor. Do you create all new optics from the ground up for lenses for them, or do you turn to existing lenses that already offer you incredible image quality, rehouse them, retune them a bit, and then call it a day? After all, there is a very large market of medium format lenses that have the ability to cover the Alexa 65 sensor, and Arri knows this. So when it came time to making the Prime DNAs, they turned to one specific set of lenses. And while yes, there are some proprietary tunings and additional elements that are going into the Prime DNAs, I can tell you that for the most part, the Arri Prime DNAs are just these lenses rehoused. The Mamiya 645 Secker C medium format lenses. If you love the look of the Arri Prime DNAs, you can buy these lenses, and I'm telling you, you're 85% of the way there. And there's clearly a love and a demand for these lenses because you have companies like TLS already rehousing these lenses so that they're more available for lower end productions. The rehouses are still about $60,000 a set to own, which is, owner-operator territory or rental house territory, and the average person isn't spending $60,000 on a set of lenses, so that's why we turn to the original stills glass. Before we get back to the video, I want to take a moment to talk about the sponsor of today's video. That's right, baby. We've got a sponsor on this video. Can you friggin' believe it? Epidemic Sound is a really great all-in-one music and sound effects platform that boasts over 50,000 songs and 200,000 sounds for whatever project you might have. It's the perfect place to go if you need to find that perfect song for your scene, or maybe you just need a couple sound effects. They've got you covered. Check this out. What sets Epidemic Sound apart from other platforms is that they offer you a plugin that you can use within your software like Adobe Premiere or DaVinci. No longer do you have to tab out of your software, go over to Safari or Chrome, find a song or a sound, download it, import it to your software, yada, 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 yada. And of course, doing all that doesn't really sound like a big deal, but being able to do all of it within your software goes a long way in being able to keep that momentum and that flow whenever you're editing. They also offer a bunch of sound tracking tools that go a long way to help simplify that process of finding that very specific sound. Heard something you like on Spotify? You can paste the link into the software or type in the artist name and the song, and it'll find you a list of perfectly matched music recommendations. Maybe you found a song that you're not really in love with, but there's a section of it that you really like. You can highlight just that bit of the song, and they'll find you entire songs that fit in line with what you highlighted. All of these tools that they offer go a long way into streamlining what can sometimes be a very tedious process. And sometimes that tedium can kind of kill your inspiration, but not with Epidemic Sound. So if you're feeling inspired and you've got a story that you're ready to tell, Epidemic Sound has you covered. Click on my link down below in the description to get 30 days free as well as 50% off of 2 months, and that's for any plan. We're talking unlimited access to their expansive catalog as well as their next generation sound tracking tools. All rights included, so say goodbye to those pesky copyright strikes. Oh, also, that discount below that I mentioned, that's going to be for new users only, so no double dippers. Don't come back here trying to get another discount. I see you. Thank you to Epidemic Sound for sponsoring the video. Let's go ahead and just jump right into it and start breaking down the cost. The Mamiya Secor Cs are about $300 to $400 a lens on average, except for the 24mm, which is the only real outlier. That is around $3,400. Two things to note with these lenses is that they use Mamiya's proprietary 645 mount. So if you wanted to use these on modern cameras, you're going to need to either find an adapter or send them in to have the mount changed, which I believe that these can be changed to a PL mount. The other issue with these lenses is that they're medium format lenses. So, you could use them no problem on a full frame camera. It's going to cover the sensor, but you're not going to be able to use the entire image circle of the lens. Think using a full frame lens on a Super 35 camera. The solution to both of these problems is going to be this, the Kip-On Focal Reducer. This is an adapter with a glass element inside that's going to bend the light so that the entire image circle of the lens hits the sensor. It's going to help give you all of those medium format characteristics that you hope and expect to get whenever you use a lens like this. It's also going to give you an extra stop of light. So if you're, say, using the 80mm f1.9 Mamiya Secor C with the Kip-On Focal Reducer, it's going to turn your lens into a 57mm f1.3. Let's take a look back at that $60,000 rehoused set by TLS. If you look at it, you'll notice that there is a 50mm t1.3, and that's because each of these lenses have this exact focal reducer baked into the actual lens housing itself, each lens. So this is what they're using for their rehouse. They're just building it into the body. The one that I have is the 645 to E mount, but they offer them in a bunch of different mounts, including 645 to PL, if you want to use it with professional cameras like the Alexa 35 or the Mini and Mini LF or the Venice. I will say now that if you do decide to, get a set of Mamiyas and you need to get this reducer, please go buy it on eBay, because Kip-On does have a US store, but if you go in the US store, it's going to cost you more. For example, this was $800 on their US store, but I was able to get it on eBay for $400 and it shipped to me directly from China. Now, the biggest, most obvious problem with using old vintage stills lenses like this is that mechanically, they can be very hit or miss. Sometimes they cannot be up to par, and they're definitely not made for use in production. You can always send them into a place like Duclos to have them cinemodded, which will help them get closer, but they're never going to fully have all of those features that, you've come to love and expect on a cinema lens. With the cinema lens, you might have a 270-degree rotation for the focus so that you can get a much more precise focus pull. These lenses just weren't made for that. The focus throw is much shorter, so even if you were to cinemod this, throw a gear ring on it, it's just something to keep in mind, because if you're using it on a production, your first AC might get a little bit annoyed with you. Obviously, a larger focus throw is nice. It's a luxury. For me, it's not really a deal breaker with something like this, but that's something to keep in mind. One of the other things that can be an issue with a lens like this is having a stepped aperture ring, which all of these old stills lenses are going to have, but you can send them into a place like Duclos and they will declick so that you can smoothly set the stop wherever you want. If you're shooting something and you want to go to a 2.8/4 split, which is right in between a 2.8 and a 4, you're not going to be able to do that unless you get the lens declicked. It's just another one of those things that you have to decide whether or not it's important to you, but just remember, we're comparing these to $60,000 cinema lenses right now. One of the main things that I would recommend you do with a set of lenses like this if you were to get them is set them up with an 80mm outer diameter ring and some good lens caps. This is something that I do on all of my lenses, period. It makes the fronts of every single lens uniform and the same. This way, if I want to use a matte box, I know it's going to fit on every single lens because they all have an 80mm diameter. And you want to get these ones specifically because they have a much longer lip so that you can put a matte box on them. These are the standard ones that, you're going to get at Duclos if you do a Cinemod. They also all take 77mm filters, so you can have, one filter for all of your lenses. Like I said, I have these on all of my lenses, even my Minoltas, my Sigmas, even on that Arri Saturn that they sent me for that video that nobody watched. And I'd recommend, getting these off of a website like AliExpress because, you can get the step-up ring and the caps for like $3-4 each, where if you went to like Duclos lenses, it's going to cost you $55 for the step-up ring and $80 for the cap. And these ones from AliExpress are machined metal, so, they're good. You can also get the seamless gear rings for the focus there too. They're about $35. But you could also, send it to Duclos and do it that way. It's going to be $80 from Duclos, but they will tailor it specifically to your lens, which is, a nice benefit. You just have to decide whether or not like the cost is worth it. If you send a Mamiya Secrecy to Duclos to do a full Cinemod, that's an 80mm ring with a cap, geared focus ring, declicked aperture, and a PL mount conversion. That's going to cost you about $710 per lens, or $215 if you don't do a PL mount conversion. So it's really up to you how you want to approach it, but you do have the option to save some money on a lot of that stuff if you want. For my Mamiyas, I just have the geared focus ring, the 80mm step-up ring, and the caps, and that cost me about $40 per lens. And since my Kip-on adapter is for Sony E-mount, I can use it on my FX3 all the way up to, a Sony Venice if I have a professional shoot, which I absolutely would take these on a professional shoot in a heartbeat. Now, I have 3 of these lenses. I have the 45mm, the 80mm, and the 110mm. And for these 3 lenses with the Kip-on focal reducer, it was about $1,600. I'm going to be filling this set out a little more, but let's say if you were to buy, a 6 lens set, because that's a pretty safe number of lenses. If you were to build a 6 lens set of these, it's probably going to cost you around the ballpark of $2,500 to $3,000 for 6 lenses, which is a huge jump down from, $60,000 or $4,000 per lens per day. Earlier I mentioned that, if you like these lenses, then you should go buy them right now. And the reason why I said that is because I think we're kind of on the edge of a medium format boom. With the Arri 265, the Blackmagic Ursa 65, and the Fujifilm GFX Eterna, I don't think we're too far off from the prosumer offerings from people like Canon and Sony adopting medium format and it kind of becoming the standard. There was a point where all of the prosumer camera offerings from Canon and Sony were all using Super 35, and then full frame cameras started to kind of trickle onto the market, and now you can get a full frame camera that's capable of great video for not really that much money. Of course, when all that was happening, all the manufacturers were scrambling to make lens offerings for these full frame cameras, but while that was happening, people were turning to older vintage glass because it could cover full frame. Jump forward to today, some of these old vintage stills lenses in their original bodies have become unbelievably expensive. Look at the Canon FD 85mm aspherical. That lens is like $4,400. Once medium format becomes more accessible to cinematographers and videographers, demand for medium format lenses is going to rise a ton. And I wouldn't be surprised if, these $400 Mamiya lenses end up going up to $1,200 or more per lens. After all, they offer a very sought-out image, which is why Arri used them as the main lens for their prime DNAs. So yeah, just try to get them before that whole boom happens, but don't worry, we still have some time. I'm not saying it's going to happen next year. So I kind of have 3 reasons for why I wanted to make this video. One is that I just really love these lenses and I wanted to talk about them a little bit. The other reason is that it's not really common knowledge that these lenses are what are in the prime DNAs. There are plenty of videos out there talking about how these lenses look so good, but I don't think people realize that they're this good. And it makes sense. There isn't really a huge demand for these lenses because they're medium format. I mean, you couldn't really take full advantage of them until Kip-on made this focal reducer. There is just a lot of gatekeeping in this industry, and I love this idea of, demystifying some of the stuff and spilling some of the secrets. You just end up having these conversations with people in the industry who have talked to other people who have talked to other people, and then you end up getting some information that shows you that some of this really highly sought after stuff has been right under your nose the entire time, and you just didn't know it. I mean, you guys would be shocked if you knew what glass was being used in some of the Panavision lenses, because it's not that crazy. I also think that there are a lot of companies that are selling lenses or lens sets at prices that just I cannot justify. If you remember what I talked about over in my Arri Saturn lens review video, a lot of these Chinese lens manufacturers are striving to create the cleanest and for lack of a better word, the most sterile lenses that they can. A lot of them are actually sourcing their glass from a single manufacturer. So you might look at a lens from Surrey and a lens from SLR Magic, and chances are they're using the exact same glass. I do know that DZO makes all of their own glass in-house for their lenses, and that's part of the reason why DZO lenses are much more expensive than other brands. For me, I think a lens needs to offer you something. It needs to have character. It needs to offer a look. I think that you as a cinematographer feel far more inspired when you're really feeling the look of a lens. I cannot justify spending $1,600 on a set of Rokinon lenses when you can get Mamiyas, Minoltas, Fuji EBC primes, Konicas, all these lenses for like the same price, if not cheaper. It's really important to remember that the point of a cinema lens is utility. It is designed to be used in production. Things like the matched body sizes, the smooth aperture, 270-degree focus throws, the gear rings. These are the things that make a cinema lens a cinema lens. When we talk about the Mamiya Secor Cs, I'm talking about the glass inside. Right now it's in a stills body, but I could have this rehoused and then it's in a cinema lens body. There is just a lot of branding and advertising online for these cheap budget cinema lenses that to me feels dishonest because they're trying to sell you this idea that a cinema lens is cinematic. It's not. It being a cinema lens doesn't make it cinematic. The optics do. The form factor is what makes it a cinema lens. That has no effect on the actual image. The next time you see a content creator posting a video called "This Cine Lens is really cinematic," just look more into that. I saw a video earlier that was titled something like "Stills Lens versus Cinema Lens, which is more cinematic?" And the only real question to ask there is, well, what's the glass? Like, what are we comparing? Because I could take a Minolta 58mm f1.2 and compare it to a DZO Vespid Prime, and I guarantee you're going to say the Minolta is more cinematic because it has far more pronounced character. I just don't really like seeing beginner cinematographers or people who don't really know any better just falling for this aggressive marketing. It just really takes away from the things that actually matter. There is no one lens to rule them all. Experiment with looks. Try out a bunch of stuff. Study character. Get a feel for different kind of glass and the feeling that it gives you. Because when it comes time to shoot that short film and you need to choose what lenses to use for it, that's an important decision. And if you think that that's a silly idea and that lenses don't really matter that much, well, I can assure you that every ASC, BSC, Oscar-winning industry titan DP, they would probably tell you otherwise. Oh well, that's all I got. Bye.